Most times whenever I make theories, I don't care if I'm right or wrong. I'm just like, wouldn't it be cool if this happened? Wouldn't it be interesting if that happened? I don't know if it will, but it'd be kind of cool if it did. This is not one of those, this is not one of those times. Okay, so here's the thing. I'm gonna blow your mind. I'm gonna absolutely blow your mind. Okay, so here's the thing. Do you guys remember the guy in episode number 1 who got disintegrated when he didn't have his little pass and he was giving crap to the Minuteman? And then like he screamed in the most hilarious way possible as he was being pruned? I think he was a Loki. I think the TVA exists to track down Lokis, to eliminate Lokis. I think the whole idea, because here's the biggest issue that I have, right? Like, yes, B-15, C-20, they work for the TVA, they are considered variants, they had a life before they were part of the TVA, but here's the problem with that. How do we know they're variants? Sylvie said they are, but it doesn't mean she's right. What this would mean, and I get this idea that like if a person's late for work, it means they went off their established timeline. I mean, that seems pretty ridiculous to me, right? Like literally like, oh my God, I'm running 5 minutes late for work, and then you're snatched up and then you're basically taken to the TVA. Like, and then you're essentially pruned, right? Or you're turned into a TVA agent. I don't think that's what happens at all. I think that's a bunch of crap. I think that's just stuff being made up to make it look like the TVA serves this grandiose purpose of maintaining this multiverse. I don't think they do. One, we know the multiverse exists. We know that from Doctor Strange 1, that the Ancient One was talking to Stephen Strange and saying, you know, there's an infinite number of universes out there, some of which are life-giving and some of which are malevolent and filled with evil. We know the multiverse exists. What I think is actually going on here is I think the TVA is trying to control and contain the multiverse, and the multiverse is trying to break free. Here's why I say that. There is a moment, let's take some of the stuff from Loki, right? Let's say that like some of the things that have been said in that show, we can take literally at face value. Even if the people saying it don't truly understand what they mean, or don't really understand the depths of what they're saying, that like, we can take it at face value, right? Let's take Sylvie, for example. Sylvie was a little girl who did something, right? It was a Nexus event, and they basically said, okay, like we're gonna snatch her up, we're gonna bring her into the TVA, she escaped, and she was on the run the entire time. But she tells Loki she tried to go back to her reality, and her entire reality had been wiped away. She couldn't go home, right? She literally said, my whole reality was destroyed. And so because of that, she started hopping and skipping through this point throughout the time stream, and that she was creating Nexus events, literally giving them a breadcrumb trail to follow, and that's how they kept tracking her down, right? They kept locating her. The other thing about this is that Loki says, we don't die, we always survive. In the beginning, I would have said, okay, so like, it just happens to be that Loki did a thing and Loki's being tracked down by the TVA, and that was basically it. But then you get to the end of episode number 4, and Loki is quote unquote pruned, and then wakes up in some, you know, post-apocalyptic landscape with other versions of Loki. So here's what I think is going on here. Here's what I think is actually happening here. The multiverse exists. The multiverse is there, right? It's a thing that exists, but it's being contained and controlled by whoever it is that's running the show now, because we know it's not the timekeepers. I still say it's missed minutes, but basically they're trying to keep it contained and controlled. The multiverse is trying to break free. It's trying to get out, right? It's trying to expand and become a chaotic place. Sylvie said that when she was talking to Loki. She said the universe or the multiverse is chaotic. It's always trying to break free. That's why it manifests chaos in the form of me becoming the goddess of mischief. Here's the crazy thing. In Jonathan Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers, you had like the collapse of the multiverse, right? The multiverse just you know, incursions, worlds crashing into each other. Black Panther reforms the Illuminati, and the Illuminati trying to figure out what's going on. Thanos and his cabal are just going from alternate world to alternate world, killing all life on those Earths and then blowing the Earths up. But while all that's happening, the White Lords of Wild Space or the Ivory Kings, Beyonders, whatever you want to call them, you have the Black Priests. And the Black Priests are these wildly enigmatic beings. You don't know anything about them, right? You simply just know that they're there. And that when the Illuminati's watching everything that's going on, the Black Priests will show up to a world, they'll obliterate all the superheroes or any resistance on that world, then they'll destroy the world itself, then they'll move on to the next one. It's not until you get to 8 months later, time runs out, that whole storyline, where Doctor Strange takes over the Black Priests and you learn their origin. That if the multiverse was a sentient being, the Black Priests are antibodies. They're white blood cells. They were basically created by the multiverse for the purpose of trying to stop the incursions. What if Loki is the exact same thing? Because here's a crazy thing, right? We can even take that further, right? Because the Marvel Cinematic Universe has borrowed a lot of stuff from Jonathan Hickman. That's where you got the Colobsidian, right? right? So like the Ebony Maw and Corvus Glaive, Proxima Midnight, that was all from Jonathan Hickman stuff. Another thing that happens in Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers is you learn that the origin of the Molecule Man Owen Reese is the exact same across every single universe. There's no real deviation there. The circumstances of how he got his powers are the same, right? He inadvertently created a cosmic cube and half that energy went into himself. Now, it may be the location of where he got his powers is different, but the process is the exact same. We know from Sylvie, she was adopted, that she is basically an alternate reality version of Loki. There's no reason to believe she is not a daughter of a frost giant, of Laufey most likely, that she was adopted by Odin, probably Frigga as well, raised in Asgard, and then snatched up and taken away. What I think's happening here is I think the multiverse is trying to break itself away from the control of the TVA, and that like little leaks in a wall, the TVA is trying to patch up all these little leaks with like bubble gum by basically rounding up Lokis, because I think the multiverse is creating Lokis for the purpose of creating chaos, creating mischief. Now, here's the biggest issue that I have with this, right? The biggest issue I have is if that's true, then it makes sense why they snatched up Sylvie when she was so young, because maybe it's one of those things where she was kind of kept hidden. Maybe she was taken at a time that wasn't long before that. I mean, she says she was adopted, so it seems like she knows she was adopted. When she found out, we don't entirely know. And it could be that like Odin showed up when she was like 5 or 6, because she looks like she's around maybe 7, 8, or 9 at the time that she's taken away. Maybe a little bit older, 10 or 11 or so, but it could be that Odin in that alternate reality defeated Laufey and then took her and then adopted her at a time when she was old enough to understand what was going on. She says she only remembers little bits of Asgard, but a lot of that could be because of the fact that after hopping through the time stream for so long, that eventually those memories just kind of fade away. In the same capacity that you can't remember exactly what it was like playing on the playground when you were 5 years old or when you were 11 years old, because as time has passed, those memories have faded. So because of that, I would say that maybe she was adopted relatively soon, but regardless, that she was taken because somewhere along the line, every single version of Loki, seemingly every version of Loki, finds a way to break away from the time stream. They find a way to leave their reality or to make changes to the reality that would affect the stability of the multiverse as it's been established by the TVA. Now that begs the question, why did they wait so long to get a hold of Tom Hiddleston Loki? Because we know the lifespan of Tom Hiddleston Loki. We know from the time he was introduced until the time he died. We know exactly how his timeline played out. He was introduced in Thor and presumably did some things. I mean, we're told his history. He fought alongside Thor. He was the god of mischief, but nothing he did from the time that he was introduced until the time he died indicated he had the ability or even chose to basically leave his timeline or make changes to the universe. There's nothing that we saw that indicated that. It wasn't until you got to Avengers Endgame that he had the Tesseract in his hand and then he escaped, that he jumped away. That wasn't supposed to happen. We know exactly how that event was supposed to play out. He was supposed to be taken by Thor back to Asgard, put in a prison cell, and then stay there until he ultimately managed to escape during Thor the Dark World, and then he died in the events of Avengers Endgame, right? At the very beginning of Endgame, or we're really at the beginning of Infinity War rather. Like we know that he died then, right? So we know how his life played out. And so it would make sense that it wasn't until he got a hold of the Tesseract that the TVA snatched him up and said, you're not, you're supposed to be here. One of the things that Mobius told us is that when it comes to the timeline, everybody has a guaranteed beginning and a guaranteed end. Now, it would make sense that if Sylvie popped up, that when she appeared, that in her timeline was the guaranteed idea that she was going to somehow alter the time stream, or she possibly even did it without knowing it. But whatever the case is, the TVA showed up, snatched her up, brought her in there, she escaped, and had been on the run ever since. I think that's what's happening, man. I think that basically Lokis are the black priests of Jonathan Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers, minus the whole traveling around all of creation and destroying alternate realities, and that their origin is basically the same way as the Molecule Man's in Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers, that their origin is the exact same across the multiverse. Every single origin of Loki is the exact same, and that somewhere along the line, these different versions of Loki all basically found a way to escape. Lokis don't die because they're a product of the multiverse. They can't be killed in that way, at least not by the TVA. It doesn't seem to be able to play out that way. We know Loki can die because Thanos killed him, but there's nothing to indicate that he wouldn't be able to find a way to come back, or he wouldn't reappear somewhere along the line. We don't really know if that's the case. I mean, seemingly the TVA getting rid of them and sending them to a different location, who knows what that idea is about, right? I mean, Loki's literally told, if you stay here, you're gonna die, by the other versions of Loki, by Richard Richard E. Grant. So seemingly they can be killed, but I don't know. The theory's not fully fleshed out, but it occurred to me that this is a possibility. And because I was talking to my social media guy, Tony, and he's like, yeah, man, that sounds like something Marvel would do. That like they would introduce just this random guy who gets disintegrated when Loki first shows up to the TVA facility and then bring him back later and you find out he's actually a Loki. And that fleshes out the whole idea that they're literally going around and just capturing Lokis. He even raised a good point in saying there's a fan theory out there that Mobius himself is a Loki. I don't know if that's really true or not. I don't think there's any evidence to illustrate that. But regardless of the circumstance, let me know what you guys think down in the comments section, man, because I feel like this could be legit. I feel like this could be a real thing. That like Lokis are basically, they essentially are manifested by the multiverse, by the universe, as it's trying to break away from the entirety of the TVA. But here's the thing, here's another thing to understand here. Here's another concept to keep in mind. In the beginning of the show, Miss Minutes talked about the multiversal war, right? Saying like, long ago, there was a war in the multiverse that basically almost destroyed all of creation. And the Timekeepers came along and saved the day and restructured all of reality according to a single timeline. Let me ask you a question. Who's to say that's not Doctor Strange 2 Multiverse of Madness? We know the TVA does not exist in the existing time stream, meaning it's not like they're 1,000 years in the future. They exist outside of time, right? They're not bound by time. And so because of that, the events of Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness is just an event that happened over there. It's not really anything that happened 1,000 years ago or in 500 years or 3 minutes ago. It's just an event that happened. And so if that's the case, then literally the TVA was formed in the aftermath of Doctor Strange 2 Multiverse of Madness. And if it really is somebody like Kang the Conqueror who's pulling the strings, it would make perfect sense. Because if you look at Doctor Strange 2 Multiverse of Madness, you look at all the chaos and everything that's going on, and then somebody like Kang steps in that craziness and that insanity, and then basically seizes control or tries to operate behind the scenes or something along those lines, it would fit in perfectly with Loki. That's exactly what Kang the Conqueror would do, right? That's exactly what Kang the Conqueror would do in a situation like that. I don't know. My theory is not fully fleshed out, but let me know what you guys think down in the comments. It's something that occurred to me and I was thinking about that and I was like, oh my God, this sounds like something the Marvel Cinematic Universe would do. It sounds like something Marvel would do. I don't know if it's true or not. I don't know, but I believe it is something it would do. I have no idea. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments section. I'm sorry, I'm so excited, people. It's really exciting when I come across when I have like an idea like this. I get really excited, right? I get really excited because it is an exciting time to be a comic book fan and to be a person who loves comic book shows. It's an exciting time. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section. Thank you all for watching. I will catch you all later. Peace.